Welcome to the Sharing Without Shame podcast, dedicated to parents and anyone else who loves someone in active addiction. Education is a powerful tool in breaking down stigma, fostering understanding, and ultimately helping individuals and their loved ones navigate the challenges of addiction. With Donna Marston, author of Peeling the Onion and Sharing Without Shame. So take a deep breath and grab some tissues as we uncover the stories of love, courage, and unwavering support in the face of adversity, as Donna and her guests share their stories without shame. Because when we share our stories without shame, we inspire others to do the same.
Hello, and welcome to the Sharing Without Shame podcast. I'm your host, Donna Marston, author of Sharing Without Shame. I'm a certified recovery support worker and a family recovery strategist. If you're a parent or family member feeling lost, overwhelmed, or uncertain about how to support your loved one who's in active addiction, you're not alone. This show tells you all kinds of different stuff. You'll find support, insights, real strategies, and that will help you navigate these challenges with strength and compassion. You can find my books on sharingwithoutshame.com or on amazon.com. So today's episode is sponsored by Snap Bands. This is my Snap Bands. Mine happens to say blessing. What you do is you give yourself a little snap. It snaps you right out of a craving. It snaps you right out of a bad attitude or a negative thought. If you're interested in buying one, you go to Snap Bands. That's SNAPPBANDZ.com. And under comments, put SWOS or Sharing Without Shame, so that they'll know that you heard about it from me. So today I would like to welcome my friend Katie Anderson, who is a proud single mom of two young men. She's born and raised in New England, and her greatest joys come from spreading kindness, supporting others in their struggles, nurturing the strong bond she now shares with her sons and family. And she finds peace and inspiration in nature, gardening, cooking, and crafts. Welcome, Katie.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm really honored to be here.
Well, I am excited that you're on here. So, first question I'm going to ask you is, what would you like to share without shame?
Great question. I'm a person in long term recovery, a woman in long term recovery. I have a little over 9 years of strong recovery that I have been able to gain and continue from the recovery field and the community and God. I have to add that I am very spiritual to the best of my ability on a daily.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into whatever your substance of choice was? How you got into that, a little bit about that, but more about how you found your way to recovery. Because this show, we're really all about showing the hope, and miracles happen all the time. So maybe just a little bit about that, but more about your pathway to recovery.
My addiction started at a young age. I grew up around loved ones that were involved in addictions too. And I feel, the influences maybe, a little bit. And then just taking my will and doing what I want as a young child. And it just progressed. It progressed all the way through until, I really came to grips or, you know, the universe, DCYF, coming into my life and really just sitting me down and being like, this needs to stop, and I even knew it too, because at the end of my addiction, it was life or death. When I was at that point, I had my children right there, with me. By the grace of God, I was willing to be able to go to any lengths to get that help again because I just couldn't
Mhm.
do it myself. I've been into treatment a few times, thought I had it on my own, did it for the family, did it for friends, did it, for the jobs and just, yep, I went to treatment 30 days, I'm good. And that wasn't the case, right? I wasn't taking it seriously because I
Yeah.
wanted everyone else around me to be quiet, leave me alone, let me use on my terms. I'm fine. I deserve this, and so forth. I mean, I could go on with that. So the last time in April 2016, I walked into this rehab for the second, third time, feeling a lot of shame and guilt due to, here I am again. What are you
Mm-hmm.
gonna do? Fix me, help me. And I really
Mm-hmm.
honestly just fell to my knees. I remember that day plain as day. I don't remember any of the other days, but just walking into that room and just falling to my knees and just asking for help. And that's where my journey continued. I took all the suggestions, I did things differently because I really had
Mm-hmm.
nothing else. I had nothing
Mm-hmm.
waiting for me. I had nothing on the outside of, those walls in treatment. I really only had myself and the people around me that were willing to help. And so that's what I did. I went to treatment and, I was there for 4 months, did a few programs that they offered there that were amazing, met amazing people there, and then went to sober living for
Mm-hmm.
a year, exactly 10 months. And that was a blessing. Sober living that I went to. I met an amazing woman there that ran, the house, and that house I still call my home. And
Mm-hmm.
the woman, that run ran the house is still, she's a dear friend of mine, family. I'll be forever grateful for her. So, I mean, what it looks like is, I did the AA, I took all the steps and followed what people were telling me to do because I had no idea what to do. I had
Mm-hmm.
no idea how to really live life, brush my teeth correctly, if I'm going to be completely honest, just almost like
Interesting.
a reborn, a rebirth of, within self and being able to be a human in society today. I continued that and I ended up working in the field for some years, which brought me a lot of joy. And that really helped me because I was able to help others as well, and give
Mm-hmm.
back what was so freely given to me at the time. Yeah, I'm really grateful. I have two young men now, which is crazy. Relationships that we've bonded and developed, and, the growth between both of us is just amazing because, you know, during my addiction, they wanted nothing to do with me and they were young.
How
Um,
how old were they when you went to treatment? Your last treatment?
One was 10 and one was,
So were they when you came home from treatment? Were they angry? Were they, what was the dynamic that went on between the three of you?
so I feel like this, when I really took recovery seriously and really got the help that I needed this last time 9 years ago, and I started showing up, on a regular basis. I made those phone calls, those promises. I didn't do promises, but I said, I'll call you tonight. I kept that word. I kept my word. Um, and I let them choose at the time of how they wanted to view me and see me. You know,
That's
um,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, if they, I couldn't get mad if they didn't want to visit, at the sober home or the rehab, or because I did do treatment for over a year. So that's a long time, but they were really happy. They were really, really happy. And I feel like they built like their trust built in me a little bit more because they were like, "Oh, wow, mom's like really serious. Like, she looks different. She has different friends. She has different
Mm-hmm.
values. She respects herself." They were just seeing a whole new person, you know.
And you have to get to know each other all over again because you're showing up as somebody they don't know,
Yeah.
and they're little kids,
Yep.
right?
You know, they
And moving forward, and when people are hurt, they say and do things. It comes out of through our mouths, right, with hurtful things or with our hands, or they take it out on each other, the family dynamic, because everybody takes on a role when somebody in the family is in active addiction, and even in early recovery as well. I wanted to mention, you had said, you had in your notes that you mentioned using dwarfism as an excuse during your addiction. So
Yes.
I'm curious, what were the barriers that you had to face in treatment and in, going to the sober house? What was that like for you?
The barriers, maybe just the same thing, that I deal with on a life basis, during even when I was a small child, I used my size as an excuse, the pity me, the oh, pity me, I'm little, I'm this. I used it to get my medication from doctors during my
Mm,
addiction. I manipulated people with my size, and since it was a real visual, because I really have dwarfism, that people would, you know, feel bad for me, during my addiction. And that's just the honest truth, the barriers going into treatment, was just, speaking of that truth in treatment and with others and, with a sponsor and, with the woman that ran the sober house of just, talking about it, but I didn't really feel judged, honestly.
mm-hmm.
Walking into treatment, I didn't find any barriers. I was treated fairly. I was treated like everybody else. Nobody gave me a pat on the back, like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Like, nope. They treated me, and that's what I needed, right? Because I'm a human just like anybody else.
So they didn't let you get away with anything that no one else could get away with because of your dwarfism,
Yeah,
because you
yeah,
couldn't reach something, or it might have been, I would imagine some of it would be more challenging for you.
yeah. It was challenging, but there was things that were capable, right? Like here's a chair, here's a stool.
Mm-hmm.
Do it like everybody else. And I mean, I grew up to do that, anyways. Maybe learning, because I had to get a real job, right? I had to get a real job in recovery. So here's the thing. And with my size, like, who knows, right? Because this world isn't so accepting of a lot. And I had to get that get well job. And I worked in a factory. And I became a very hard worker, like, very hard worker. I had women around me that shown me that, like, no matter what, you work, you show up, and you do what you need to do, and be kind as always. And so I was working at this job, and I was working and working overtime, and I just felt like I wasn't being treated enough, right? Treated well as my role that I was playing in the job. Um, so I had to learn to advocate for myself,
Mm.
um, as a woman being different. And so I learned that and I did it and I, conquered that fear and I was able to get that raise because I spoke up. I would hide and not speak and think like everybody around me knew what I was thinking or, just cater to me, so I had to learn a different way regardless of living with this differency, right?
So what were the tools that you used to shift your mindset to, you've had enough and you don't want to live that lifestyle anymore? I'll give you an example. Like my son, when he found his recovery, his true recovery, he would put his mattress on the floor so when he woke up, he could roll on his knees and pray to a power greater than him, who he chose to call dude, because at the time, even though he was brought up a Christian, that he didn't believe in God. Because if there was a God, why would he be going through such horrible things? Right. But so he started reading this book and doing positive affirmations at night, rolling on the floor on his knees and praying and then going about his day and asking, if he could just stay sober till midnight that night. Because if he thought about the following day, it was too much. Did you have tools like that you utilized?
That's funny that you brought this up, and it's probably so cliche now, right? So when I was in treatment in the facility, I did smoke cigarettes. So the suggestion was to throw my pack of cigarettes underneath my bed, right? Because I'm going to get that cigarette in the morning. That it would remind me to get on my knees and pray, right?
Okay.
Because what it looked like for me before was just like, oh, poop, get me out of this, right? Oh, poop, don't let this cop find what's in my car. You know what I mean? Calling out to God that I knew. And I grew up religious as well and went to church. And so, getting into recovery and finding a new way of, spirituality that I like to call it today is, I do, hit my knees or I walk around and just talk to my higher power, whatever I may call that. And just, it could be as simple as thank you, right? Thank
Mm,
you. Writing down those affirmations, journaling. I have all these different books and stuff, even texting, spiritual things to different women and friends and just piggybacking off of that and just knowing, like if I can just stay sober today, I did something right, right? And that's how it was at the beginning. And then, I would challenge myself if I could just stay sober this whole week and not obsess over it, right? And I've been through a lot of things during through my recovery that
mm,
I've had people say, "Oh my god, I can't believe you haven't picked up." And I'm like, "For what though?" Right? Cuz like I'm in a part of my recovery today that like what would that do? Right? It wouldn't do anything for me, right? But like spiral out of control. It's just not in my nature today. So I'm really grateful for that. I'm grateful
mm,
to be able to get through the life challenges and, grief and challenges that, come to everybody in life, whether you're in recovery or not.
mm-hmm. Because it really isn't about the drink or the drug. It's why. Internally, what's going on inside, whether it's trauma or something that, PTSD or whatever, our head can be our hell, right? Our thoughts
Mhm.
can drive you to drink or drive you to do stuff that you wouldn't normally do.
That was just my solution at the time, right? I could speak for myself. That was the solution. That was the band-aid to make me feel better, right? After, whatever, I ripped that band-aid off, I was still oozing, right? I was oozing with that trauma, that guilt, that shame of whatever it may be. I mean, they speak about it in AA. You had the isms before you even picked up your first drink or drug, you know,
Mm-hmm.
whether
Mm-hmm.
that lying, cheating, stealing, whatever it may be, the obsessions, right? It could be so simple.
Yeah, interesting that you say that because, some of the people, so I go around and speak at different treatment facilities. And when some of them, when I've spoken to them, they've talked about, when they were little kids, they used to hide sugary treats. So
Mhm.
they could, have it in there, they would hide it in their bedroom and have it at night or whatever. Or, they would steal, they started stealing very young, whether it's food or seeing things and they wanted it and you know, they were going to get it one way or the other. Or this is a big one. When, I'd miss a $5 bill, it was never really big bills, a dollar here, maybe a 10. And I'd be like, I don't think I went anywhere to spend that money. But it's a little bit at a time.
Mhm.
Can you speak on that at all?
I definitely can. I mean, just lying about, to my friends, like, oh, yeah, my family's rich. Let's just say that, right? Lying about that. And lying about that, like, some famous person is my relative. Or,
Oh,
like, it just little things like that. Stealing those snacks and putting them in, using friends to get stuff that I've never had, you know?
mm,
or other people just to feel the need, the want, right? The feeling wanted. I mean, that could be a whole nother talk show, right? About
yeah,
just
right.
our past and stuff. But like, so today for me, right? Like, if I continue those behaviors, right, and not catch myself or hold myself accountable, I'm going to end up using. And it could be any type. It doesn't have to be either a substance, right? It's the
Right.
behaviors too of just changing your way of thinking, right? I'm not
Mm-hmm.
going to go and steal out of my mom's purse today and think it's just okay because I wanted something, right? I'm not going to do that today. And that goes for anything. I'm not, going to show up to work and just be like, well, I'm not going to do this today because I don't feel like it. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to show up and do my best. And when if something occurs and say I was wrong and didn't realize it, then I'm going to hold myself accountable.
Not to get too personal unless you want to. How do you talk to your kids, your boys, about drugs and alcohol? Because you said they're teenagers now.
Yeah, I have an adult child and a teenager. I have been completely honest with them since day one, coming out of like rehab and, going into sober living and stuff. 100%, right? We have open, honest conversations about it. My kids have seen it. My kids known people that have passed from this addiction.
Mm-hmm.
It's very common, it's very out in the open, it's in the world, it's in the schools, it's at people's homes. They grew up with it, and they choose what they choose. And but we're completely honest.
Mm-hmm. So no worries.
I don't
Just
have any worries,
just for today.
just right, just for today. We've had conversations and they don't seem interested, or like, not that I'm a perfect mom, but like, I keep a close eye on them, but let them grow up and be humans too. And, if anything pops up, they know they can come to me,
Mm-hmm.
and they have. And
Yeah.
that's a really great relationship to have today because I didn't have that growing up. And when they talk about these generational cycles and breaking these curses, so they say, that's what I try to do today, you know, and
Oh, absolutely.
just
Breaking, I mean, my husband's family was riddled with it. And, we warned the boys and please don't try, don't do this, don't do that. And I have one with a SUD and one without that doesn't have an issue. Like I said, we talked about it. One of my husband's sisters she had cirrhosis of the liver. She had AIDS, she was just in bad shape, took her to the hospital and said, this is drugs and alcohol. This is what it does. She passed and, he thought, well, it's never going to happen to me. I'm just going to fool around with it.
yeah,
And, unfortunately, the disease of addiction took over and my beautiful boy was lost in the bowels of it. And every once in a while, I'd get a glimpse of him, right? While he was in active addiction. But I learned the hard way that when I was trying to control him, because I didn't know better, that I was making a lot of messes. And because I didn't know how to deal with it. We don't know what we don't know.
I
And,
was
and,
thinking that.
and then, as a mom, thinking we can control it all, what I've learned very late in life, trying to control our children is our fears that
Mhm.
we put on them, right?
Yep,
And how do we not do that?
that's so true.
Yeah, it's an awful thing to watch people when they're sick and suffering. And I learned the hard way that I couldn't love my son into recovery. And when you learn those things, it's devastating because I'm the mother, damn it.
Right.
I should be able to do those things. I
Mhm.
should be able to love him in recovery. So today you spread kindness. I see some of your posts and I think they're always very cool. Now you're not working in recovery anymore.
I'm
You
not working in recovery right now. No, I kind of stepped back from the field, did a lot of self work around that, to just take a step back and work on myself, because we can always work on ourselves, right?
Hey,
Every day life gets lifey, right? And in recovery and non-recovery, whatever it may look like, life gets lifey. And sometimes you have to check yourself and see what's really important, right? Yes, recovery is important to me. Yes, working with others is important to me. But at the time, I needed to take a step back and just see what else was out there, right? For the time being. And just, I'm a workaholic too. So that's a problem.
I have a little of that.
So yeah, but I stay well in the recovery field still, the community, I should say. I work close with a few people, so that still brings me joy. I mean, I can work with people in recovery without being paid, if I should say.
And it's a lot. There's so many people, because I work in the field as well, and I worked for a large nonprofit, and I did a lot with recovery community centers, and I found that a lot of people who were newly in recovery, becoming recovery coaches, it really empowered them, which is beautiful. However, I found it almost went a little too far that they thought the people that they were working with aren't going to do well if they're not around. I'm not sure that I'm saying this correctly, but did you ever feel like that? Um, like you had to be there so that they could do well, or
Right. Yes. I've run into that so many times. Like, oh my gosh, if I don't go to work today, I'm feeling like crap. But if I don't go to work, John Smith is gonna leave treatment. You know? Oh yes, I've run into that plenty of times. And that's where I had to step back a lot and just remind myself, like,
mm-hmm.
you're not going to keep them sober, Katie. You're not going to keep them in treatment. You're not God, you
You're not
know?
that powerful.
Right. I'm just there for support because again, I had to bring it back. And a lot of times I had to remind myself, Katie, remember when you were sitting in that chair, right? Remember when you were sitting on that couch, saying the same exact thing that this client or resident is saying, step back, let them feel the feels and get through it, however it may look, right? Because like
Mhm.
you're just there to listen sometimes, not play savior or God.
Yeah, because we're not God. I know. I tried playing that, and it didn't work out real well.
Yeah,
And we have to humble ourselves. Like we're not that. We're just not all that. Putting it into perspective that they come into treatment and you're their recovery coach or CRSW, putting that into perspective, you're just really there to support them,
hmm
right? Maybe, offer some guidance, but you can't make it happen for them. Like nobody could do it for you, right?
exactly.
You
Yeah,
had to do it on your own. And whether it was a spiritual awakening or there was a mindset shift, right?
yeah,
You hit your enough and you decided you wanted your life to be different. And you put one foot in front of the other.
absolutely,
And
right.
whether it's baby steps or big steps or whatever, you did it. So we're going to wrap up. And what would any words of wisdom be for a parent that may have a child? And then for somebody who's sick and suffering and they don't know where to turn.
Mm. So for a parent, to a parent from a parent, don't feel shameful for asking for help. There's
Mm-hmm.
help out there. Ask away, share your story. Um, Once this is posted, contact me. My ears are open because at the end of the day, we can't do this alone, right? There's a huge community out there, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's the active community or the recovery community, the supportive community. There's communities out there, just sitting there waiting for the phone call to be able to support somebody else. And for the person that's still struggling, I believe that you can get well, that you are worth it, that there's help out there. You don't have to do this alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I love you.
Yeah, that's sweet. I remembered my thought. Recovery is a 10 plus year process. You don't go to treatment and it's over. It's a process and you have to learn, and the first year your brain's healing. Actually, the first 2 years your brain's healing. And then the third year you're getting more commitments, and I think it's like year three. I think it's year three that people in recovery start getting honest with themselves. Therefore, they could be honest with everybody else. And so
Yeah.
it goes on, and you just get better and better. But I think it's important for anyone to understand that just because someone goes to treatment doesn't mean it's over, right?
I like
Yeah,
that you said
it's
that.
it's a process, and how do we support our loved ones who are in early recovery so that they can be successful? And that looks like, to me, as a mom who doesn't have a substance use disorder, I had to work my own recovery program from being codependent and from being my son's unhealthy helper. Thank you. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. And if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, do you have like on Facebook or?
Yep, I have Facebook. They can get in touch with me through there. That's the only
Perfect.
social media that I have right now because that can be addicting too.
Yeah, right.
So I try to just minimize so much stuff because I don't need all this stuff. So yeah, contact me on Facebook and I'll be more than willing.
Yeah, and people can always contact me, and then I can contact you and give you their information, and we can make it happen between the two of us.
Yes, we can.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. If you'd like to support the Sharing Without Shame podcast, please subscribe, like, and leave a review. If you're in need of emotional support, Donna offers private sessions. For more information about Donna and the services she offers, visit www.sharingwithoutshame.com or email her at Donna4support@comcast.net. Nothing in the Sharing Without Shame podcast is intended to establish a therapist-patient relationship or intended to replace the services of a trained therapist, doctor, or health professional, or substitute for professional mental health, medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Until next time, may your faith and strength heal your heart.